Hello, world. Welcome to the Breakout Finder podcast. I am your host, Nate Liss. You can find me on Twitter at an outraged Jew. And with me tonight, in one of the dopest hoodies I've seen in a very, very, very long time, Mr. Ryan Lopes. You can find him on Twitter at StillRyan5. Mr. Lopes, how the hell are you this evening?
Dude, Nate, this is our time, buddy. This is when the skies open up. The stars are shining on us. It's Senior Bowl week. We are rapidly approaching. We're about to be, knee deep in the offseason here. We got a couple more weeks for the Super Bowl, but this is it for us, man. This is when people turn to the breakout finder. This is when people turn to these metrics and they have questions, man, and we've got answers for them, Nate.
We're gonna have plenty of answers, Ryan. And if you turn to my knick-knack shelf behind me, you'll see that it's getting filled up. I've got the rotating, magnetized Seahawks helmet, which is dope. It's just floating in midair, very cool. Among some other things, there's going to be some changes, but I recently bought another autograph because I want to fill this shelf out. I needed a piece to bring it all together. And what better than a Jeff Goldblum autographed headshot? I'm going to throw it up.
You're
right
a guy,
on the
Jeff.
shelf. I got a Jeff Goldblum autographed headshot. It's coming this week. Very excited about that. My father, very excited as well.
The whole family's proud of you.
My whole family, it just brings a tear to my eye. But it didn't bring as many tears to my eye as the people on Twitter did. And again, you can find us on Twitter. If you don't like the show, give us your best take. Let us know why you didn't like it. I mean, based on the weekly plays, you like the show. It's getting better. We're bringing on great guests. We get great response. But this tweet did not get a good response. Basically, Ryan, what I said, and you're aware, Eminem and Mac Miller both released albums on the same day. Clearly, Mac Miller's a posthumous release. I said Mac Miller's album was way better than Eminem's album. And since then, after listening to both a few times and Mac Miller's much more, I don't change my stance. I think Mac Miller flat out ran Marshall Mathers over. Ryan, I was getting berated for this. Am I crazy? Am I wrong?
No, you are, as usual, Nate, you are spot on, my friend. And I want to, there's a couple different layers I want to peel back here before we get into football here. Dragonfly Jones on Twitter, absolute Twitter legend, top 3 Twitterer ever. Basically came out and said, he's removed himself from any Eminem kind of discourse, as of, I guess, this latest drop here, because the following that Eminem has, however you want to look at it, is so ravenous, man. They are going to defend M, whether it's 2020 M or 2006 or 5, whatever generation M it is, they are riding with Eminem forever. I found that out firsthand myself. I basically tweeted out, that M hasn't had a reasonable bar since his appearance on Jay-Z's Renegade. You and I have discussed Renegade a couple times. I think we're both in agreement that M more or less washed Jay on his own track. I have a lot of respect for what M did on Renegade. You walk it back a little bit further, you're talking about the Marshall Mathers LP. And for me, again, I might be on kind of one extreme side of this, but everything else between like Marshall Mathers LP, the Renegade track, and everything that happened after that, like, I have been thoroughly unimpressed. So I'm probably going to hear about that commentary in the comments or in my mentions, whatever the case may be. But I think the Mac release is so far and away. It's not even on the same tier, the same planet. So I'm 100% with you. I do realize that I'm probably, again, on one side of this thing, on one extreme side of this, with my bias and all that. But I'm not an M fan, and my mentions were flooded with them, Nate, and all you and I were talking off air, man. All the replies perfectly matched up to the Twitter avatars of said replies. Like, if you give me a lineup, like, I could have matched the replies up with what the faces looked like, man. It was just perfect. As Dragonfly Jones says, man, you get all like the Mountain Dew drinking lacrosse bros in your mention that just tear you to shreds.
So I feel vindicated. I'm not wrong. Everybody who had something negative to say to me was wrong. They're clearly misinformed, and I'm not a boomer. So stop messaging me that. It drives me nuts. I've said it before. For the love of God.
Not that old.
Alone. Yeah, I mean, I was a fan of hip-hop before Eminem went mainstream. So I've been here since the beginning. Listen, and I can just tell you, from TRL, bleached blonde hair Eminem, to 50-year-old screaming in a microphone, daughters in college Eminem, there's been a big difference. Okay, things have changed. His pants don't sag anymore. Shirt's tucked in. Clothes fit a little snugger. He's more sensible with how he's spending money. Things have changed for Marshall Mathers, okay? He's not the top dog, and he hasn't been the top dog for a long time. And the other thing is, can he stop with all the punchlines, one after another after another? It's like a fucking speed bag, like, hada, 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 hada. Like, I can't even enjoy the song because, like, every 5 seconds, I'm getting hit with, like, a triple entendre, and my brain is, like, having an aneurysm trying to solve the depth of these punchlines. And some are good, but some are corny as hell, Marshall. Bag it up, for Christ's sakes. Maybe take a bar off. Like, maybe a punchline, write a couple lines, come back with a punchline, and maybe run it past a couple people. Maybe make sure it's good before you throw it out there. He had a couple good ones. He had a couple really good ones. I can't remember exactly how it went. It was something on the new album, like something people, God. Now I'm going to forget it. It's a Toy Soldier punchline. Somebody tweet this to me. I'll remember it later. But it was something like, like wound up on your back like a toy soldier, or something like that. And those kind of punchlines, I'm like, all right, that's pretty dope. That's pretty good. Yeah, okay. Even though you haven't been in a fight in 15 years because you've been so wealthy for so long. It's just braggadocious battle rap. It doesn't matter. Listen, you guys know where he's at. He is clearly outside the top 10 at this point in the hip-hop industry. I know people aren't going to like that one either, Ryan. Mm-hmm. But let's move on to something a little more relaxed. Let's talk about the Super Bowl. Okay. It's 2 weeks away. Is there any insight? Is there anything you're looking for? Do you have a prediction? We'll make this quick.
I love Patrick Mahomes. No secret. I think most people kind of gravitate towards Patty Mahomes. Very, very excited for what the game last week. The way, when he carried this Kansas City squad there, man. He's been on fire. On the opposite end of that, you got a quarterback that, the Niners didn't really need Jimmy G, which I'm sure you were sitting back, with your little corncob pipe, just nodding away, watching the way that the Niners kind of won that game. We're going to talk a little bit about Raheem Mostert, I think, a little bit later in the show. But it's going to be a fun matchup. I'm a big Mahomes guy. I also like, I love Kyle Shanahan, Kid Shanahan, the way that he coaches, the way that he calls the games. I love guys like Deebo Samuel as well. Of course, we talked about Deebo a lot last week with our guy Brad. So I guess super high level take. I'm excited for Patrick Mahomes. I'm here. I'm riding for Patrick Mahomes.
I'm with you, man. I am, as a Seahawks fan, I'm prepared for Patrick Mahomes to win numerous Super Bowl titles, at least 5 of the next 8, because apparently he can just sling it. I mean, he is one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen. In terms of fantasy football, I think he's still the QB1. I mean, we love Lamar Jackson, but what Patrick Mahomes does week to week is incredible. And I like San Francisco, but as numerous people before me have said, Patrick Mahomes and this KC offense is a lot like Golden State in their heyday, right? Like, they can be down 11 and up 21 in the blink of an eye. Like, it happens that fast. And I wonder if the 49ers are going to be able to slow down all these weapons. So it'll be interesting. It'll at least be a good Super Bowl. This is going to be one where, as a Seahawks fan, I want San Francisco to win because it's the division, but at the same time, man, Patrick Mahomes is just so goddamn good. And I've been saying Jimmy Garoppolo so bad. It would make no sense if he won a Super Bowl in the year that I caped up so hard against him. But the one thing that makes Patrick Mahomes great is Tyreek Hill. And Tyreek Hill of late is quietly climbing up dynasty ranks, Ryan. And he's climbing a long way up the ranks. In fact, I have recently seen numerous dynasty rankings with Tyreek Hill as a top 5 or higher wide receiver Is that crazy? Should he be that high, Ryan?
I recently had the pleasure of sitting down with not only Matt Kelly, but Mike Beers of RotoViz fame and Patrick Murphy of the FF King fame. Three really, really great dudes. Those who listen to the show obviously are super familiar with Mr. Matt Kelly and his work, but Mike Beers, Patrick Murphy, follow those gents as well. Us four sat down, shared some delicious Korean barbecue, shared a bunch of beverages. We were watching the Kansas City Chiefs game. And there was a pause in one topic, and we quickly all switched to each other when Tyreek Hill might have had a cool highlight play or something like that, and we all kind of looked at each other at the same time and said, why not Tyreek Hill as the overall wide receiver one in Dynasty? And then we kind of sat back and kind of smiled and said, well, Mike Thomas is still pretty good. But I think there's definitely a true argument for Tyreek Hill, just given to you and I both sat here, talked about how much fun, how good, how awesome Patrick Mahomes is. There's something to be said about a player like Tyreek Hill, who will be 25.9 currently, attached to a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, who's only 24. Nate, you said it. He's locked and loaded for the foreseeable future. So there's definitely something to be said about that pairing and that staying power there. He's not my wide receiver one overall, but I think there's easily an argument that puts Tyreek Hill inside the top 5 as far as Dynasty wide receivers go. Last week we talked about some of our favorite options with Brad. You got the usual suspects in Chris Godwin, the DJ Moores, the Mike Thomas, AJ Brown, who completely leapfrogged a whole bunch of people and finds himself probably in that top 5 discussion as well. And then you got kind of the aging assets, whether it's Julio Jones or DeAndre Hopkins. I still find myself gravitating towards Nuck, but man, there's definitely a path for Tyreek Hill. And if you threw your nuts on the table and told me he was your one, I'm not really going to fight you about it too much, because I know the type of talent that he is attached to. I know the type of talent he is on the field himself too. So I can certainly see it. Nate, do you find yourself on that side with me, or you completely flip-flopped? You're on the other side of things?
Well, I've seen Tyreek Hill ranked as high as number 2 overall. And I got to point out a couple things about Tyreek Hill. I think that's too high. And like you noted, one of the big reasons why Tyreek Hill is so valued and so favored is the fact that he is the 1A option to Patrick Mahomes. And again, Patrick Mahomes is possibly the best quarterback in fantasy football, again, aside from Lamar Jackson. The issue, though, with Tyreek Hill, I mean, let's look at the last 2 seasons where he's really taken off. Last year, he finishes the wide receiver 4 in fantasy points per game with 20.5. And then this season, he finishes as the wide receiver 11 in fantasy points per game with 15.7. But again, what makes him great is clearly being Patrick Mahomes' option and Andy Reid's ability to unlock his big play-making ability himself. But what keeps him suppressed is the volatility. For instance, look at Tyreek Hill down the stretch in 2019. From weeks 13 to 17, while averaging an 88% snap share, he averaged 13.9 fantasy points per game. And despite the insane big playability in 12 games this season, Tyreek Hill secured more than 6 receptions only one time. Think about that for a second. He caught the ball 6 times or more one time in 2019. So every game was 6 or less. I mean, that's nothing. That's what DK Metcalf is doing. DK Metcalf is nowhere near the top of this. And people are going to tell you it's because of injuries. But people aren't going to note the fact that he killed you down the stretch this year and he killed you down the stretch last year. Look at 2019 towards the end here. Of his last 5 games in 2019, he has 1 game that you can take to the bank. He has 1 game where he scores 23.8 points. Outside of that, he scored 10.1, 13, 12.2, and 10.1. I mean, he absolutely nuked you at the end of the season. And that's something that's important. And we could take it back to 2018 when he had an absurd year, finishing with 87 catches for 1,500 yards. Yet he finished outside the top 23 wide receivers on 8 different weeks. Wait a minute. This guy is the wide receiver 2 in Dynasty, but in 2018, when he had his best season to date, he had 8 individual weeks where he finished outside the top 23. That means he averaged less than 15 fantasy points per game. Yet his season-long average was 20 and a half. Do the math on it. And we've seen him play a full 16 games, and he's still ranked outside the top 10 in season-long targets with 137. And that's when his quarterback was number 7 in pass attempts. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like, I love Tyreek Hill, and I get that he's volatile. I own Julio Jones in numerous leagues. Julio Jones killed so many of my fantasy seasons, but the reality is Tyreek Hill is the type of player that is going to punch your lottery ticket and get you into the big game. But over the past 2 years, when he's ascended to this hypothetical rank, he has murdered you when it mattered. Absolutely slaughtered your fantasy teams when it mattered, Ryan.
The other kind of contextual note here is, as you said, Nate, he is the 1A, so to speak, in that Chiefs offense. But this is a Chiefs offense that still has Andy Reid, of course, at the helm, calling plays. Andy Reid enjoys utilizing his running backs out of the backfield. We know that he's gonna keep, especially get him in space. A lot of those quick little kind of dump offs, get him in space, letting him create. That's going to be a big part of this offense still, which of course takes away some of that volume from Tyreek Hill. Also, the player that we haven't talked about, who is also really good at his position, is Travis Kelce. So this isn't a Mike Thomas situation where, yeah, he's got Jared Cook down there in New Orleans, but outside of Mike Thomas, there really isn't a whole lot of firepower there per se. There is the Alvin Kamara. I get that. We saw Kamara take a step back too. So sort of similar situations there. But I think just with the Patrick Mahomes kind of presence there, and the way that he does kind of gravitate towards a Kelce and stuff as well, it would be a bit of a harder sell to kind of push him above like a Mike Thomas. But I think you make a lot of good points. It's definitely going to be an interesting point of conversation because these conversations are happening. Like you said, you've seen him as high as wide receiver 2. I just had a conversation with a bunch of really smart guys that we were kind of fucking around with the idea of having him at the top of that list as well. So this is a player that certainly is in that conversation, but everyone's probably going to be split as to which way and kind of where that ranking finally does end up.
Yeah, I just don't see it. As much as I like him, and I like the fact that he's relatively young. Why are we ignoring the fact that a guy like DeAndre Hopkins sees an infinite level of targets to him, and has not nearly the level of competition? I realize Will Fuller is injured in his own right, but I can't think of many wide receivers in this league that if you excluded their touchdowns, they would be a vastly different player. Like Michael Thomas, exclude the touchdowns. Go ahead. DeAndre Hopkins, exclude the touchdowns. Go ahead. I mean, even Keenan Allen in a couple situations, exclude the touchdowns. Go ahead. You take the touchdowns away from Tyreek Hill and go look what it does to his games. Because just this last year, in 2019, he had 2 games where he was over 150 receiving yards. Every other game was under 80 receiving yards. And in those games where he was under 80 and scored over 25, it was touchdowns or multiple touchdowns. So you take TDs away from Tyreek Hill, and he is a vastly different player. So settling for a guy that's not a high volume receiver, and not that he isn't, because he was just outside the top 10, which is great. But again, this is a Chiefs team that, yes, they targeted the running back position 97 times last year, but they target that across 4 different running backs. They don't have a go-to running back yet. They haven't changed their offense to a guy that they can trust as a runner, that they trust as a receiver. You have Travis Kelce. You have Sammy Watkins. You have some of these players. You have Mecole Hardman that came around. That's kind of going to be able to do what Tyreek Hill does. So if Tyreek Hill's targets come down, I have no idea how he's supposed to be ranked as high as he is getting ranked. Because really, when you look at it, that's the thing. You're hoping for a big play out of Tyreek Hill. And as I just laid out for you, he didn't have that many big plays. There weren't that many big plays last year. Again, 2 games. He went over 140. Every other game was under 80. Every game but one was 6 catches or less. He's not a vacuum. He's not Keenan Allen. He's not Michael Thomas. He's not DeAndre Hopkins. He's not even Tyler Boyd in that right. So what is driving him into the number 2 spot? My mind is boggled. Yeah, if you play in a best ball league, right on. Tyreek Hill's your guy because, yeah, look, last year he goes 33, 23. I mean, he didn't even really have big games last year. He had a couple, but he was pretty pedestrian. And let the people tell you it's because he was injured. He missed games at the beginning of the season. Oh, he's trying to get right. Watch what's going to happen Super Bowl Sunday. He'll probably blow up because that's what he does. And yes, he's gotten you kick return points. And yes, he's done a little bit of rushing. He is dynamic. He's hard to guard, but he's hyper volatile. Give me the safe playmaker over Tyreek Hill any day of the week. Ryan.
Man, oh man. Nate, it was a passionate Tyreek Hill rant, man. I didn't know you had it in you. You mentioned pre-show that you had some Tyreek Hill thoughts. I didn't realize you had those kind of Tyreek Hill thoughts, man. Let's kind of pivot a little bit. Let's talk about wide receivers. Let's not talk about NFL wide receivers. Let's talk about these up and coming rookie wide receivers, 2020 draft prospects here. One of the other fun takes that I've seen float around on the timeline, I think as recent as yesterday, and it might have been from, I don't know if it was Jim Nagy, the Senior Bowl guy, or it was someone in big media that basically said that he hasn't not talked to a front office that hasn't had Brandon Aiyuk over N'Keal Harry. Which
boy.
You and I talked about Aiyuk, probably a month ago or so. There's a lot to like about his game, what he does after the catch. But this is a JUCO kid that certainly is ascending at the right time. I don't know, and I myself am a fan of what the rookie's going to be bringing to the table. He finds himself just outside of my top 10 wide receivers at the moment. I don't know, Nate. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I just haven't really fell into the groove yet myself. But I'm not sure that. I mean, these players, their profiles coming out, and I know how the breakout finder's gonna kind of see things, and just how I see things with my own eyes. These players just seem to be kind of night and day to me. I don't know how you can have them close. Am I crazy for not giving, I guess, Aiyuk the respect that he might deserve, or certainly that the NFL thinks, or is the NFL completely kind of off the rocker with this one?
I feel like Stephen A. Smith on this episode, Ryan. Ryan, let me tell you. Let me give you an answer on this one. Look, here's my issue with Brandon Aiyuk, and I went over this to ad nauseum on one of our breakout bonus audio files, which you can find on our Patreon, patreon.com/breakout finder?
That's the one.
I have too many hyperlinks that I got to remember. How does Matt Kelly do it? Look, when you look at the breakout finder itself, which there's great news coming. I can't release it yet. But when you look at the breakout finder, and I am looking at a spreadsheet for the 2020 prospect class. I am staring at it right now. Brandon Aiyuk, number 17 dynamic score amongst this class. Number 17. Now, of all the metrics we have found the strongest correlation to fantasy production through the dynamic score. And being dynamic is a big factor. So this is something that after entering these players, I've turned the corner a bit on Brandon Aiyuk. But let's remember a couple of things here. One, like Ryan said, JUCO transfer. That's tough. Look, Marquise Brown did it. Tyreek Hill did it. Don't forget about Tyreek Hill. He did it too. But so did Cordarrelle Patterson. So here's the concern, though. He doesn't break out till he's a senior. He does it in the Pac-12, a conference that, for better or worse, hasn't necessarily put out top-level talent for a while. And it hasn't put out a boatload of good players. Juju Smith, there's a bunch of names out there. But I always handle it with kid gloves when I talk about the Pac-12. I liken it a little greater than the Mountain West Conference. So, but look, when you look at Brandon Aiyuk, he didn't do anything till he was a senior, and he certainly didn't do anything when N'Keal Harry was there, a player that apparently scouts and GMs have turned their back on. They've turned the shoulder to N'Keal Harry and his age-adjusted production and his explosiveness, and we have rotated to Brandon Aiyuk. And I like Brandon Aiyuk, but again, I'm cautious due to the fact that he broke out so late in the Pac-12, is a JUCO transfer, but he's a dynamic player. He does a lot of different things, Ryan, and that's the reason why I think teams are going to fall in love with him. I thought that Brandon Aiyuk was more of a third-round guy the more I kind of heard about him, and third or fourth when I dug into his profile. But I've heard through the grapevine, I have heard that Brandon Aiyuk is a first-round potential draft pick. Ryan, slow my beating heart.
Yeah.
Call me. Is this Cordell Patterson part 2?
I think we have a Cord Patterson in this class. I don't think it's Aiyuk, but I do think that the first round hype is a little bit wonky to me. Again, this is a player that I truly do enjoy as well. I'm looking at my I'm getting ready to kind of to post in the near future here, the next day or week or something like that. I want to get my my top 25 kind of Senior Bowl week, pre-combine wide receiver rankings up. I'm looking at my list right now. I got Aiyuk at wide receiver 11, so certainly a player that I like a good bit. But I think when I was kind of hyping him up, and then you kind of came in over the top and kind of helped me kind of slow my roll a little bit. I think you were spot on with that kind of whether it's a late 2 or kind of early to mid 3 or something like that. That seems like the range for a player with his type of profile. Now, a dynamic score that kind of surprised us. That will certainly help boost some things. But overall, this is still a really good class at the top. I have a hard time believing. And you might have tweeted about it. I know we're going to talk about it here a little bit with the sky falling and all that. But you might have tweeted about it, Nate. Like it seems like, and we do this annually almost. We as in fans, I guess. Where what seems like there are 26 first-round wide receivers right now. Everyone has a favorite, and everyone has their list, and everyone's list is 20 players long. We know that 10 wide receivers aren't getting drafted in the first round. This class is still really good. I have a hard time kind of slotting him in that top 32 conversation, given the talent that is at the top of this class. But I guess he could, ride a strong Senior Bowl week and right into although I'm not even sure he's practicing at the Senior Bowl. And have you heard about that, Nate? Is he there? Is he playing?
I don't think he's practicing.
Okay. So he could parlay, he can kind of make people forget about this little blip and show it at the combine, which we talked about. The combine is going to be important for him. If he does that, then I guess the stock's going to continue to rise. But again, I just have a hard time seeing him kind of land in that top 30, that top 32. Again, we got a lot of time to go, but that does seem like a bit of a stretch to me.
Yeah, and I enjoy the hype. This is what happens. We get to the Senior Bowl, and then eventually we forget about a lot of these players when the combine starts, and we see Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb and T. Higgins and all these other guys, and we go, oh yeah, that's right.
They're really, really good. Yeah, they're really good.
These are the big guys. It's like when I'm watch like a minor league baseball team walks by, I'm like, hey, that's awesome, let's go, and then the pro team comes after them, and you're like, oh, there they are. They're Chicago White Sox.
That's right.
So that's kind of what we're seeing here. I'm not saying that there's no chance that Aiyuk finds a role, but this is a very dynamic player, kick returner, broke out in his final season, didn't really do it with N'Keal Harry there, is probably going to have a long way to develop. I mean, to become something important in the league, a number one. I don't see that happening, but he could be an explosive number 2 in an offense. He could be a downfield threat, a stretch X type player, and it's yet to be determined, but no matter what, we know he's going to have a special team ability for some team on Sunday, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And you got anything else to add to this before I rotate to the Henny Penny? The sky is falling on the 2020 class, Ryan. People are losing their minds. Why are people losing their minds, Ryan? What happened to this 2020 class?
Yeah, this has been a topic of conversation for you and I over a couple different texts and phone calls and stuff. But again, talking about things that we do. It's a cycle. We're in a cycle right now. It's just beginning, but we are certainly in this cycle, and it's a cycle that goes on every single year. Where entering the season, it's entering the off season. This is the draft class. We love this draft class, and then inevitably you get someone gets injured or coming off an injury earlier in the season or towards the end of the season. Then inevitably someone that is a junior or a redshirt sophomore, they end up staying at school, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, this class that we loved so much looks a good bit different. And we saw that happen with this class. Hubbard, I know running back that I was certainly high, and I believe you were as well, returning to school. Etienne down at Clemson, back for his senior year, returning to school. Tylan Wallace, we knew about him getting banged up, returning to school. Devonta Smith returning to school. So a lot of these wide receivers, a lot of these running backs that a lot of us loved and had within the top 5 or 6 or 7 within their respective position groups are no longer available for us this year. So people that are holding on to these 2020 draft picks because we've been talking them up, these things are like gold. Get the 2020 picks, hold on to them, select good players, win. That people are kind of freaking out now, Nate. You know what I mean? They don't have all these choices. They don't have an abundance of options in front of them anymore. I think you're here to say, and before you do your little spiel, because I know this has been building up for you, but I think I'm here to say that don't panic, friends. This 2020 class, Nate just rattled off the Judys, the Lambs. Jonathan Taylor's still here, guys. We got Jonathan Taylor this year. Mm-hmm. I know that these are top 5 selections. I get that, but there's still plenty of talent to go around, especially in these first rounds. So if you're out there freaking out, throwing your first round 2020 picks away, I'll be there to happily catch them for you. That's all I want to say.
I'll be right behind him, picking up whatever he can't catch. And I mean, yeah, we didn't. What you've got Chenault, you've got Ruggs, you've got Tyler Johnson, you've got Justin Jefferson, Michael Pittman's out here tearing up the Senior Bowl. I mean, there's a bunch of names out there, and there's still running backs. So what? Harris went back. Still got DeAndre Swift, Dobbins, Akers. I mean, Edwards. There's so many names. Like, what are our people? I've had so many people ask me, should I trade my 2020s for 2021s? I mean, I don't know. Like, no, don't move off your picks. I mean, we play this perpetual game where the next class is better. And
it's always the best, right?
It's always the next class. And why don't you just trade them for 2028s? Go ahead.
That's going to be the one. That's going to be the one.
Because I've been to a couple high schools. I was scouting a couple sophomores, and I know it's going to be a pretty solid class. So why don't you go about 7 years out? Just start camping on those picks. Look, the class is really good, and year over year, guys sneak into the end of the first round. I mean, I was tweeting about this. The Alvin Kamaras, the Kareem Hunts, the David Johnsons. Where did Terry McLaurin go in your rookie draft? I guarantee you he was not a first-round pick, and I guarantee you he was, at best, he was a late second-round pick unless you have some savvy players, unless somebody in your league had the Breakout Finder database and knew definitively, with super confidence, when they clicked draft Terry McLaurin, that they were going to get a stud. He fell in your league. He didn't fall in my league. Ryan, I'm looking through this class, and we talk about the sky is falling, and there's still players left. There's lots of players that we like, and I'm not concerned. I'm not getting rid of the picks. You sound like you're not getting rid of the picks.
No, sir.
We need to just hold on, and let's go to another calmer subject, because I feel like I want to get upset again. I'm just trying. I don't want to blow off steam on this episode.
Our compatriot here, friend of the show, friend of ours, Matt Kelly, made the Mobile, Alabama journeys down there with the roster watch guys. You and I were ticketed at one point late last year to kind of make that trip, but things just didn't work out for us. We got some of the fun stuff lined up for the folks though down the road here, but. We talked about top of the show. This is our favorite time here. This is our time of the year. Things kind of start off with the Senior Bowl, a Senior Bowl game, rolling to the Combine, obviously the draft. So these next few months here, very exciting time. The Senior Bowl, a couple things, and Nate, you kind of hit on it before, where since the Senior Bowl is in front of us and that's all we got, people are going to salivate over these players. It happens every year, and some of the time for very good reason. If those will remember last year, Deebo Samuel, he showed up at the Senior Bowl, completely showed out from start to finish. Ended up getting drafted at a particularly high draft slot, and ended up being a pretty good player. So things sometimes, sometimes good players play good, as stupid as that sounds. You know what I mean? This is the kind of math that I'm going to instill in people's heads here. Sometimes if you're good, you just play good, and teams like good players, Nate. So you get to Deebo Samuels. One name, buddy, that I'm going to highlight right now. And again, I talked about my kind of updated, refreshed top 25 wide receivers. I'll get running backs done at some point too. One name that kind of snuck back in to the top 10 for me, someone that I had there kind of preseason, kind of fell out of it. And I've jumped back on him, and I guess at a pretty good time. Denzel Mims, I have him at wide receiver 9, and it's only been a day here for Senior Bowl practices, but Denzel Mims is all over the timeline, Nate. I don't know if you know about a ton of Mims, but outside of Mims, you got Antonio Gandy-Golden, AGG from Liberty, small school kid, showing out at the Senior Bowl. I know you love yourself some small school. I don't know the college type prospects, man. So he's gonna be one of those this year for sure. Collin Johnson, big kid, 6'5", 6'6", Texas kid, moving pretty well. Player that I'm a bit lower on, but I'm stoked about Denzel Mims. I think he's going to be a player that's going to continue to rise. I personally do this every year for myself, where I fall in love with a Baylor wide receiver. Denzel Mims is that guy this year for me. Ended up playing some pretty good ball down there. It sounds like he's going to start parlaying that to a strong Senior Bowl. Hopefully a strong combine. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the names that no one was talking about prior to this week. Now all of a sudden from here on out, he's going to be the name that's mentioned kind of as that day 2 type of quote unquote lottery pick, so to speak. So Nate, if you got any Denzel Mims thought, he was the one player that I wanted to bring up because the timeline's already buzzing. It's early, and we know it. We're kind of in this vacuum here where the Senior Bowl is all we have in front of us. So you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt. But I'm a Mims fan. You should be a Mims fan too. Do you have any Mims thoughts?
I mean, gosh, this is here's my issue. I always have an issue. Everything's an issue. That's why I'm outraged. Yeah. I don't hate Mims. I don't hate him at all. But I'm always so cautious with guys from Baylor. I know you like these long, athletic.
I do. I fall in love with him. I don't know what it is about Baylor, man. I'm attracted to him. Whether and it was all. I don't even want to say his name.
Say it.
I don't want to say his name because it was a few years ago.
Just
he ended up getting drafted by a particular team. I can't say it.
Say it already.
I love Corey Coleman. There's a poster somewhere in that closet of Corey Coleman. There might be a Corey Coleman jersey. I love Corey Coleman. I always loved Corey Coleman. That's where things started for me, Nate. I got sucked in. The Josh Gordon experience. I got sucked in. Okay? I will always love Baylor wide receivers, for better or for worse. Dude, I was touting. I don't remember his name. He was undrafted. The Raiders picked him up. What the hell was his name? I'm going to blank. I'm going to yell it on the middle of the show at some point.
Oh, it's a Fusuvu guy.
Yeah, it 100% was a Fusuvu guy, and I am blanking on his name. But I loved him, dude. He was like my wide receiver, like 6 or something. So stupid. But every year, I do this to myself, Nate. And this year's no different, man. Denzel Mims, tell me why you have a problem with these Baylor wide receivers.
Because Baylor is notorious for dropping like 100 points on teams. I mean, they won a game, 61-6, 63-14, 45-27. So you can't box score scout with a guy like Mims. Yeah, you just can't do it with Baylor wide receivers. Now, it's going to be good to see him playing in the Senior Bowl and see the type of hype that he gives. He's a player that wasn't highly recruited necessarily coming out of college. But, a multitude of years here at Baylor, has good production. At the Senior Bowl, he's getting that hype. I'm just curious kind of what the ultimate trajectory is for Mims. I don't know. I mean, this is such a deep wide receiver class. He feels more like a depth player on an NFL team than a game changer. I might be wrong. This might be the type of player that has the attributes and the skill set, but the question is, can he put it together? Because so many times before, we've seen guys with this body of work and athleticism and size, and it just doesn't come together. So where does he get drafted? I don't even know what the current consensus is on him, but I would imagine he's a day 3 guy. But in this class, depending on how many receivers go early, that might push him up for a wide receiver hungry team. He might again be a late day 2, early day 3 guy.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It might have been our guy Fusuvu, man, or someone, but someone kind of drew the parallel of like kind of the rise that Darius Slayton had last year. Different types of players, different builds, but Slayton was a guy that kind of shot up boards. So maybe Mims kind of, and again, we see this happen every year where guys show out at these all-star circuits, and it's just what happens. All of a sudden we're kind of pushing them aside, then all of a sudden they're in our face, and again, it's good players playing good, Nate. As crazy as that sounds, when they're good, they're good.
People have been screaming it at their radios or monitors for 5 minutes. Ishmael Zamora.
That's what it is.
That's who
Ishmael
it is.
Zamora. Dude, I loved Ish Zamora, man. The Raiders picked him up undrafted. The shirt came off. I was like, this is the one. This is Josh Gordon again for us. He stinks, dude. He stunk.
How many Baylor wide receivers are going to have to come up over the hill and get hit by a bow and arrow and fall back off the cliff before you give up on Baylor wide receivers, Ryan?
Man, I don't know. The Corey Coleman thing is still so prevalent for me. He has such an imprint in my head. I'll never forget Corey Coleman. But I tell you what, buddy, if Mims if Mims does this thing where he rises up and he's all of a sudden like a day 2 kid, and he ends up going high and some teams kind of counting on him. If Mims falls flat, that'll be like the 4th or 5th or 6th Baylor kid I kind of hung my hat on. I might have to pull the proverbial ripcord, Nate, and be done with it then. But for now, man, we're riding with Mims, Nate. I'm telling you, we are riding with Denzel Mims.
Okay, I can appreciate that. Ryan, tell me about somebody else. Tell me about another player at Senior Bowl that you're excited about and the college that they go to that I'm not excited about.
Yeah, well, we brought up Antonio Gandy-Golden. Again, you've in your time spent with Mr. Matthew Kelly, you guys tend to go back and forth about these small school prospects. You're talking about players that I might not necessarily know where their school is, but Antonio Gandy-Golden played for a school named Liberty, Nate.
What? Wait, what?
Liberty College, I believe. I couldn't tell you much about the school.
It's a liberal arts school?
Could be, Nate. Could very well be a liberal arts school.
Well, let me tell you about Liberty. They transitioned from the FCS in 2017 and became a member of the FBS in 2018 and were bowl eligible this year. This is a team that prior to this, good for you, Liberty.
Huge. That's huge.
You literally earned it. You did it. You are free, and you're playing with the big boys now.
It's huge.
Go on. Tell me about AGG. I'm sorry.
So he's a player that 6'4", 220. I'm not sure exactly where he checked in, and I believe he had. And again, this is the funniest time of year for me because all the timeline is different, various heights, weights, hand sizes and stuff. I think Golden's hands were average or above average, so that's another cool box to check. But he had a good day of practice here, Nate. As far as his collegiate resume, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, back-to-back 10-score seasons. So certainly a go-to option and kind of the option in that Liberty offense. You throw on the tape, you see a player that certainly excels at the catch point. I'll end up probably writing about him at some point here as kind of one of those kind of late round, mid to late round kids. So a player that I think, again, much like Mims, is going to end up having a good week here at the Senior Bowl. Maybe he turns that into a good combine, and then all of a sudden we're talking about Antonio Gandy-Golden as a round 3 or 4 pick, Nate.
This is making my head hurt, Ryan.
It's a lot.
It
happens so fast.
Well, yeah, this happened way too fast. They had the 128th of 130 teams. That their schedule was number 128. Okay. That was the level of toughness of it, was 128th of 130. So now listen, I don't want to take anything away from the fact that AGG in his 2019 season was dropping haymakers on Maine. Right. I don't want to do that. I don't want to call him out for beating up Hampton. I don't want to call him out for beating up Buffalo. I don't want to call him out for beating up Georgia Southern. These are obviously premier defenses and premier teams.
Not powerhouses per se. But do you always come back to the point that you want these players that are playing in these conferences to show out against these teams, right? You want them to play as if they are playing down to this what we would perceive as, again, I don't want to offend anyone that is a Hampton alum or a University of Maine alum here, but these aren't notable, football type schools here. But so you want these players to kind of show up on the field here and play like they're playing inferior competition, right? And I think Golden did a pretty good job of doing that.
That's a fair point, Ryan. I've been bit by my own venom. You've stuck a barb in my heart, and you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Why would I hold it against him for beating up Old Dominion? Why would I hold it against him for beating up on North Texas? Why would I hold it against him for beating out Norfolk State? Why would I hold it? You get the point.
Right,
Listen,
right.
And guys come out, and the Senior Bowl has exposed, talented players in the past. You brought up a good one there in Deebo Samuel. And what about Cooper Kupp?
Right.
That was another wide receiver that had an insane college resume for receptions, but we could destroy the level of competition that he faced.
Eastern Washington.
Which is not good. It's not good, but look at him in the NFL. I mean, the first 6 weeks of the season, you could have argued he was top 5 in the league at the position. I mean, he was incredible. So the Senior Bowl has a place, Ryan. It has a place. So who else? What's another name on this list?
The only other one that I had jotted down, just because he personally is a bit further down my list. He actually is the wide receiver 25 for me currently, which is tough for me to say because I historically I've gravitated towards big wide receivers. I've always been hashtag team big wide out. And Collin Johnson, again, 6'5", 6'6", huge body, Nate. Big kid. He's like, you remember the all the Dorial Green Beckham hype, right? Just this monster of a wide receiver. Turns out DGB stinks. Collin Johnson, man, we assume is not in that mold and isn't going to follow that same path, but he's another name that I saw kind of pop up in the timeline a little bit today. Aesthetically, the way that he plays stylistically here, for being that big, having that much of a that much of on his frame here, the way he moves for a 6'6" player looks pretty effortless out there, man. Looks pretty smooth. Texas hasn't necessarily been a high flying offense per se. I actually like the other kid in that offense, Devin Duvernay, who we're not going to talk about today, but we're going to talk about at some point, I'm sure. I kind of like him a good bit more than Collin Johnson, but as far as today's hype goes, Collin Johnson was on that timeline, Nate. I don't have too many Collin Johnson takes right now. Again, I know where I kind of have him ranked, but a name that I saw buzzing a little bit. It is early. Do you have anything to any kind of kindling to throw on the fire here, Nate?
I mean, obviously, Double D in that offense is
Double D. Is that what we're calling him?
Yeah, you got to call him Double D. You got to call him Double D.
Fair enough.
And what did he check in at? Did we get some context on his weight, his size and weight? Because I know he was projected to have a thick BMI.
Is that Collin Johnson or is that Double D?
That's Double D.
Double D. I don't know.
He was gonna be a thick boy. And he was gonna be one of those players that wasn't gonna be brittle. He wasn't gonna be a Corey Washington, and he was too short to be that anyways. He couldn't possibly be that. But we knew we weren't getting a Greg Dortch. Big fan of Greg Dortch over here. Might still go buy a Greg Dortch New York Jets jersey. I'm sure they're very cheap.
Yeah, get it. You got to get it signed and framed.
I'm actually going to sign it myself. I'm going to sign it and send it to him. So
What could have been? What could have been?
I don't have many takes on Collin Johnson. I think the thing here is that, again, this is a deep class. I think this is the type of class where you've got some of these ancillary sort of outside, high upside talent players that good teams are going to end up with. Good teams that have been hurting for depth. And I always bring up the Green Bay Packers. But these teams like this that have an alpha and they don't have much depth because, Geronimo Allison and MVS were awful this year. I just wrote an article about it. There was nobody besides Devontae Adams in that offense, and they need to address it. But these are the types of teams that can sort of replenish these players that they were hopeful on with some of these 4th round, 5th round type players, because there's a lot of receivers in this class, and that's where a guy like this stands out. Some team will inevitably fall in love with this height, weight, and we'll see how his numbers come out. But it's an exciting time. I mean, there's a lot of prospects. There's a lot of players to talk about. We didn't talk about Michael Pittman. We'll do it in the future. He's been looking really good there. But I know that USC receivers suck, right? Because they go to USC, so they're no good. Ryan, we need to transition the show and talk about a little bit more of the dynasty sort of trade rookie thing. I like the hopefuls, but there's some other names we want to bring up. And these are patron questions.
Ooh.
And every week this show gains more and more traction, more followers, more listeners. I'm so happy. Ryan's happy. We have some of the best fans. We have really great people that like this show. And we have a lot of people that support it. It helps us continue to try to give you guys a product every week. And people that are already supporting the show at Breakout Finder, patreon.com/Breakout Finder. These people every week have the ability to ask a question to us or whatever guest we bring on. And we try to do our best to read all these questions. But as this patron account grows and these questions continue to get delivered, we will do our best to answer them. Some of these have a lot of words to them. These are deep questions. I mean, these are the types of questions that I would probably read, then go outside, stare into the moonlight, and smoke a long cigarette and just think for a while before I came back and answered it. But here we are. We're going to shotgun approach it.
Yeah, that's what we do.
We're going to do our best. So I'm going to start right off the top here because this kind of touches on something I said. It touches on the sky is falling, something that we are clearly worried about. I'm not worried about it. You guys are worried about it. Ryan's not worried about it. This is from Second Round Pick. I love this guy. It's one of my favorite patrons. I love all the patrons, but this gentleman is just
he's a special place in your heart. Yeah.
Constantly active. So here's the question, Ryan. With the surprising return of Chuba Hubbard and Travis Etienne to college football, would you break the cardinal rule of drafting a running back with a late first or trade out for a 2020 first?
And I'm glad that we started with this question. I'm glad that, timing is on our side with this. I just wrote my weekly Debbie Dive piece on our guy T. Higgins. And what I said about T. Higgins is the way that I kind of see things shaking out. Again, complete transparency. It is early, early yet. I think if you find yourself as second round pick, kind of suggests here in that later part of the first round, you're holding the 110, the 19, 111, whatever it is, you're probably in T. Higgins territory, I would assume. So Nate and I just talked about it ad nauseum here. We aren't jumping ship. Depending on what kind of league you're in, you might get one of these quote unquote top backs that slips. It doesn't look likely given as second round picks states that a lot of these other top backs kind of went back to school. But if I'm in that late round option, that late round slot, I should say rather, and I see a guy like T. Higgins staring at me, I'm more than Nate personally. I'm more than content, pulling the trigger there, riding with T. Higgins, and keeping things moving, buddy. Am I off my rocker for being so excited about someone like T. Higgins at like the 110, 111 or something like that?
No, not at all. I mean, why would we stray away from these types of players? I mean, we can go back to draft classes. Look, where was Kenny Golladay taken in your rookie draft? Where was Cooper Kupp taken in your rookie draft? Where was Corey Davis taken in your rookie draft? Just because some players are leaving and going back to the league, it doesn't mean that anybody necessarily has a significant pulse on who's going to be great and who's not. Now, we claim at the Breakout Finder that we have a great product. That's what we believe in. But when I look back at these classes, look, where was Michael Gallup selected in your draft? Where was DJ Chark selected in your draft? Everybody that was leaning on those analytics, a lot of people didn't have Chark rated that highly. But Chark was an athletic player, and he has a super high breakout rating in our thing. There are so many players year over year that fall, deep down these classes, and we talked about Terry McLaurin. What about Michael Thomas? Where was he in a class? There's just so many players. So no, I'm not trading out of it because I understand the depth of it. But here's the deal: if I am going to trade out, I'm going to trade out when I'm on the clock. I'm going to trade out when the value of my pick is at its peak, and I'm going to trade out when I know what I'm actually staring at. Because if I have the 109 right now, but my rookie draft doesn't go down for another 3 months, why would I trade that pick? How do I know things aren't going to change? How do I know that players aren't going to slide? How do I know that, there's so many things. Quarterbacks could prop up. A tight end could suddenly rise from this class and push a guy back. So there's so many reasons why I'm not getting rid of these picks yet. And if you trade them today, it's foolish because they're only going to be worth more in the future. And they're going to be worth a lot more when you're on the clock. All of us that have done slow drafts, email drafts, you know what it's like when you either have a pick or you're 3 picks down the line and some guy's on the clock and your air quote guy is on the board. What's that urgency feel like? What's that, that feeling of wanting to scramble to make a move there feel like? You got 11 other guys in your league that are staring at you on the clock with some guy on the board. Just wait. There's no reason to trade it today. We're not going to know any more about 2021 in 3 months, than we do right now. It's not going to change. So I would say hold it till you're on the clock. Don't get crazy. Hit me, Ryan.
Beautiful, man. Question 2, NATO. This is a 2-parter here. I'm going to read the first part. We'll circle back around and we'll maybe touch on the second part here. Our guy Daniel S, man, big time patron. Very very stoked when he throws these out there for us to kind of mull over here. So his first question: what does Drew Lock's value in super flex leagues look like going forward? He adds, no one seems to really put him up their ranks despite being young, showing promise, and being the quarterback of an offense that will most likely add to the wide receiver core in the draft. Nate, throw your thoughts out there, man. I got some of my own thoughts about Drew Lock's value going forward.
Boy, Drew Lock is a tough one, isn't he? I mean, we don't have much sample size to go on. We know that the Denver Broncos drafted him, early enough, 2nd-round pick. So they've got a vested interest in him. No, he wasn't taken as a top 10 pick, but he was taken early enough that Denver clearly had plans for him. And we saw last year, we saw a game in Houston. Okay, we saw a game in Houston where Drew Lock was 22 for 27. 81% completion percentage, over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's a big time outing. That's a big time outing for a quarterback like this. So we've only seen 5 games. We haven't seen enough from him to write him off. But with that being said, I do believe that Denver is going to add some help, with Cortland Sutton in this offense. But I'm not writing Drew Lock off. We saw enough, at least, to believe that there's an upside there. So for that fact, especially in a super flex league, I'm going to hold on to Drew Lock because I want to see him in a 2020. But I think Denver likes what they have here.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think Denver does kind of hold firm, builds around Drew Lock, as crazy as that might have sounded at one point in time. But you hit it, man. There's Cortland Sutton there, who you and I are both very, very big fans of. I think I might have called Cortland Sutton quarterback proof too, going from Flacco to Lock. He looks like he's going to be good no matter who's under center. He's building that rapport with Drew Lock right now. I'm not going to quit Deshaun Hamilton just yet. I do think Denver adds another wideout opposite Sutton. So you got 3 wideouts potentially there, with one being a rookie that I imagine will be a high round selection that you and I probably will both kind of gravitate towards. You got Noah Fant there. Mm-hmm. You got a backfield that, our boy Royce Freeman isn't quite getting it done, but Philip Lindsay, between the rotation there, it's a solid backfield. So I think Locke kind of has the pieces in place to be a successful quarterback, especially in superflex leagues. He almost, like you said, it is a tougher call, but he almost seems like one of the easier, tougher calls, if that makes sense, man. Just given the weapons that are around him and what we think's going to happen with this Denver team going forward. I might not have a ton of faith in John Elway, but this wide receiver class still looks really good. That he can pull one of these guys off the board early, and continue to kind of add to that arsenal there. Nate, what is Daniel's second question for us here?
Oh my goodness. Boy, question number 2 from Daniel. It's a good first name. Is Austin Eckler criminally underrated? He might have had the least hyped top 5 season of all time. I get that the situation he's in hurt his stock a little bit, but does anyone care how talented he is? He put up legit receiver numbers at the running back position and could get even more looks if Gordon leaves. Thanks. So, Ryan, Austin Eckler, unrestricted free agent right now. Right now. Gordon, free agent right now. What are you doing with Austin Eckler?
I love me some Austin Eckler, man, and I think you and I were talking off air a little bit as we were going over these questions a little bit, and I pulled up our guy Matt Kelly, man, the playerprofiler.com. I pulled up these dynasty ranks of his, and I was a little surprised to see Eckler sitting down at RB19 currently, which I guess to Daniel's point does seem a good bit underrated. You kind of scroll up the list a little bit here and you figure out, I would probably put him over, Melvin Gordon's gone. I think we assume Melvin Gordon's gone. He's going to end up, if Gordon lands in Houston, like that's a pretty good spot for him, but Gordon's gone. Kerryon Johnson's another name that's probably in that same conversation, a player that you and I both like a good bit. I can go either way on Kerryon Johnson. Kareem Hunt likely stuck in Cleveland. Maybe he's gone. Things could kind of open back up. I'm not sure if he gets that feature role again. That situation is certainly fluid enough. If he is a feature back, I think he has an argument talent wise to be above Eckler. You got guys like Darius Geis, Marlon Mack. We know Derrick Henry's about to get paid. Can Derrick Henry replicate what he did this season? And then of course we're starting to talk about top 10 backs here. So Austin Eckler, RB19, probably maybe more of like an RB, 14, 15 for me. So I guess maybe a bit underrated. I'm not saying criminally underrated. He looked really, really good when Gordon was holding out and Eckler was, that de facto RB1. I assume, again, Gordon's gone. I assume that the Chargers ink Eckler to kind of be that RB1A. I'm not sure they trust him to kind of run the rock as that true bell cow back the whole time. I wouldn't be surprised if they do invest in some sort of, whether it's a free agent, whether it's a mid-round draft pick. They got Justin Jackson there. So I think Eckler's more than earned the right, Nate, to run the rock and to kind of be that feature back. Whether or not he gets true bell cow usage, that might be a different type of conversation. But again, currently RB19 over at playerprofiler.com. For me, maybe a touch lower, but it's kind of tough to really negotiate and kind of make a convincing argument to kind of move him a bunch over some of these other names that are right above him.
So we got another one here. This is from Chris. Another good name. We got a lot of patrons with good names. Waller was the big 2019 tight end to pop, with Higbee and Gesicki having a strong appearance late. Where do you see these guys finishing next year, as their teams will likely have more receiving talent around them? That has been a good thing for Kelsey, but I'm not so sure these situations are the same. Also, who is the legit shot for a breakout tight end next year? I like Njoku, but other than that, no new young name seems to crack the top for me. Ryan, you want to take a rapid fire shot at this?
I'm gonna give you one breakout name, and then I want you to just wax poetic about this one for me, Nate. As far as the name that could ascend, that could make that Waller type leap, let's call it. I like Ian Thomas down in Carolina, man. Only not yet 24 years old. It's gonna be a new offense. Obviously, Joe Brady calling plays, super hyped. So Ian Thomas for me, we assume that I don't know has Greg Olsen announced his retirement? Do we assume that he's just retiring? Either way, I think Thomas is certainly next up, and he's the guy that I would tab right here, right now, as the next breakout, so to speak.
I like it. I like Njoku, but a name that I also like is Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson's a name that didn't get a lot of hype last year, lost his quarterback for a multitude of games, only played 12 games himself, and ended the season with 59 targets for 32 catches. So this was a guy that in his rookie season was on pace for probably well over 80 targets, which would have translated to probably a 45 catch season. So We know that he's a good athlete. We know that this is a team that's devoid of talent. And as a matter of fact, I projected one of the top wide receivers in this class to the Detroit Lions, as crazy as that sounds, in my latest article, which drops tomorrow on the Patreon account. If you are curious, I'm sure you're going to see ads everywhere. But I still think that Hockenson is a player that a lot of people should be excited about going into next season as well. And I believe Matt Stafford sticks around in Detroit. So here's a question from Bryson Kramer.
Great name. It's another great name.
It's a great name. Do you guys think Darnold finally breaks that top 20 quarterback mark and becomes a weekly playable guy? Or is he screwed as long as Adam Gase is there?
Darnold, I think Darnold's a legit talent. I'm not sure where I'd rank him just off of pure, quarterback ranking wise, but I am a bit concerned, certainly with Adam Gase being there. I mean, we saw what happened in Miami with these pieces, with these talented players. Once Gase was no longer in the picture, that might be a bit recency biasy, but I just think Gase is an absolute nut job and not cut out for this head coaching thing. That aside, we've heard some kind of riffs about Le'Veon Bell maybe being one and done in New York. We've heard some rumors about Robbie Anderson. Are they going to end up locking him up? Is he going to be free to walk and kind of test the waters? I think if you lose one or both of an Anderson or a Bell, I'm not sure that leaves Darnold in very good standings. Of course, if Robbie walks, I assume they're redrafting or signing some sort of free agent early, and throwing some big money around. But I'm not sure that Gase is going to do Darnold any sort of favors, Nate. Gase is a weirdo. That's all I got there.
Well, so the next part of his question asks also, do you guys see any possible breakout wide receiver that will be going in the early part of the second round in Superflex? A name that I like, and we've talked about, and Ryan, you wrote up not too long ago, is Tyler Johnson of Minnesota. This is a guy that has kind of all the intangibles, all the makeup of a player that could be a hit at the NFL level, and he's not getting the notoriety, and likely the NFL will miss on him for cautionary reasons. He may not be much more than a third-round pick in the NFL draft if we're lucky. He may end up that Stephon Diggs fifth-round pick. But this is a guy that with enough buzz amongst the dynasty community, I think he ascends up there early, second round. That's fringe late first. I don't think he's necessarily early second round when I talk about Tyler Johnson, but he's a guy that I would confidently select. And I think some of these other guys that get pushed back a little bit are going to be Justin Jefferson type if they go in the second round, especially if you have a bunch of guys go in front of him. That's what people are going to do. They're probably going to pick guys in order essentially. Smart players are going to do a little bit more research, but there's certainly going to be a guy in your league that's going to go with the earlier selected draft slot over a guy that goes in the second round, in which case, boom, DJ Chark falls right in your lap. Next question, Ryan.
Alex, from our guy, Nate. I've heard nothing but great names so far, dude.
Yeah,
Alex, next up here. Alex wants to know Raheem Mostert. Raheem must start, as our guy John Proctor said weeks and weeks ago when he was on the show touting Mostert here. Alex wants to know, what are our thoughts? What are your thoughts, Nate, about him for 2020? Is this a player you're holding on to? Are you looking to sell high? What are we doing with Raheem Mostert?
Oh God. This is one of those players that essentially validated that running backs don't need to be selected early. That you don't need to take a guy in the first round to have a guy have a monster game. I mean, look what he did last weekend. Absolutely,
4 tutties.
Yeah, oh God, don't do that. Absolutely, shredded the universe. And we see an out in Tevin Coleman's contract with 0 dead cap money at the end of this next season. So, I think there's reasons to like him next year, but I got to believe that San Francisco still kind of makes some considerations on what to do with the running back position. I mean, you have Coleman, you have Mostert. Matt Breida is a 2020 restricted free agent. We don't know what's going to happen there. I think there's a lot of questions. I would hold on to Raheem Mostert if I had no other running back weapons, but to me, he's an absolute sell high because historically, players like him don't last that long in a role like this. Like the clock is going to run out on him, whether it be drafting a rookie or an injury, and the next man up kind of ascends beyond him, and next thing you know, he's in a split carry backfield. That doesn't necessarily happen to your top tier running backs. They get their job back even when they come back from injury. It's rare that you get a Melvin Gordon situation. It's rare that you get a James Conner, Le'Veon Bell situation. Typically, guys just bounce back and that job is theirs. But in this case, I don't know that it would be. So I would sell high right now.
Nate, our guy Justin follows that up with another Mostert question and says, if you are selling high, Nate, since you're locked in right now, buddy, you are in the zone. If you are selling high, Justin wants to know, what would you trade Mostert for?
What would I trade him for? I mean, there's so many guys that are going to come into this next class. It just kind of depends. Like if I can get an early second round pick in 2020 where I could end up with Clyde Edwards, Zach Moss, one of these types of players, I might be more excited about that. I like Mostert, but I kind of feel like he's a career backup. And any starting role is temperamental. At least one of these newcomers, has a chance to be the guy. Andy's a rookie. The likelihood of them losing value is rare. Raheem Mostert will never be more valuable than he is right now. I mean, this is the absolute peak of the mountain. You are standing at the summit of the mountain. It gets no better than this. So if I could get an early second-round pick for him, before he plays in the Super Bowl and goes 11 carries for 21 yards, I'd probably do it.
All right, man. Listen, last question from your guy. Second-round pick 23 snuck in here again.
This guy got two questions. All right,
he's got two. He's got two for us this time. So this is the last one, and then we'll get the hell out of here. Second-round pick wants to know: do you agree with this premise? I'm starting to notice trend of running backs that as soon as they make number one running back performance, RB1 performance for a season, it's almost like a systematic drop happens. With this in mind, from a dynasty perspective, would you be crazy to immediately sell your number one running back, in this case, in second round picks case, Christian McCaffrey, for as big of a haul as you can get?
I mean, here's the thing. I don't even subscribe to this mentality necessarily, but if you can get a treasure trove in a trade, if you can get a windfall of a trade, if you can get a Ming Dynasty, I don't know, I can't think of anything good. It's sometime. I don't know. Anyways, point is, if you can get something incredible for Christian McCaffrey, you're probably making the move. Yeah, if somebody offered me the 101, the 102, and a Kareem Hunt, and some wide out or something, maybe I'd consider it because you get Jonathan Taylor, you can rebuild. The thing is, especially with Christian McCaffrey, and we always talk about it, but regression has to take place at some point. His volume is too high. Now, here's the thing. I believe that Christian McCaffrey is at his absolute peak right now, right? We saw the most ridiculous fantasy football season in recent history. And this is a guy that almost had 300 carries and had over 140 pass targets. Like, this is the most improbable stat line you will ever see in your life. And the likelihood that it comes down a little bit is probably real. It's probably realistic that a guy that's this good, if this team becomes more competitive and they're in ball games, why wouldn't you take a little bit of the workload off of your 210-pound running back? Why put him in there every single play? There is nobody behind Christian McCaffrey. That's the thing. There's nobody that comes in behind him and does anything of substance to help this team out. I mean, you go look at the carries last year. It went Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Allen, and then Curtis Samuel was third with 19 carries. There was nobody behind Christian McCaffrey. I mean, that's fucking crazy. Like, if McCaffrey goes down, you got nothing back there. I mean, I think a lot of us believe that Curtis Samuel might slot in as the running back if McCaffrey went down. But I believe that that Carolina is a perfect example of a team that needs to add that depth at the running back position. And with a class this deep, who knows if in the third round they don't snag a guy that can help out a little bit, and suddenly we see a little bit of that workload regress. I'm not saying that Christian McCaffrey is set for regression, but boy, we are at the absolute peak. I mean, this thing is about to pop, Ryan.
Nate, I'm spent, buddy. I'm spent. We covered a lot of ground. Just Patreon questions, man. I think there was a few more that you left back in the vault, man. Super, super dope. Response to again, complete transparency, a super last minute request of our patrons, but they came out firing, man. So that was really cool to see. Like you said, buddy, the patron community is growing daily, weekly. It's been awesome to see. The pod is up. Everything is trending in the right direction. Nate, do you have any other news and notes, breakout finder project wise, that you want to share, or are we just gonna drop the mic, walk out, and say we'll see you guys next week?
I mean, it's Matt Kelly's mentioned it. I've mentioned it behind the scenes. I've shown some pictorial evidence of it behind the scenes, but
Ooh.
the app is coming.
I
had Skype meetings about it, and it's coming in the very near future. So for all of you people clamoring to get your hands on the holy grail of dynasty wide receiver evaluations, it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen it, and things look great, and it's en route, and I'm excited about that. And like Ryan said, these podcasts, happen because we've got such a great community of people that listen to this show, and we're going to continue to put out good stuff for you. And we've got some incredible guests in the future. So if you want to ask a question to one of the biggest fantasy analysts in the world, because a couple of our next guests come join the community, join the Discord chat. A lot of cool stuff going on. All right, man, I think I'm done. I think I beat the brakes off Tyreek Hill. I yelled about Liberty College. I got a headache. I'm tired.
Yeah, I have nothing more to give, man. I have nothing more to give for this week.
I'm going to go to my Alexa and have it give me a backstory on the Ming Dynasty. I got to figure that one out.
That came from.
All right, man. Well, we'll be back next week.